Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host Nikki Kilpatrick, and today we are joined by Rachael Dunlop here in Northern Ireland. Rachael, it's so good to have you join us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
You're welcome. I'm usually used to having someone across the water or across the pond, as we say, mainland UK or further abroad. So it's lovely to have someone from back home in Northern Ireland, as we would say. So,
Yes, our lovely broad accents together.
Yeah. We connected a few months ago and we met in person, which was great for a coffee. And I was really touched by your story of ulcerative colitis and your stoma surgery, and also that you're a mum of a young child with IBD as well. So let's kick off. Let's start with your own journey and let's talk a little bit about that. You are, well, I'm not going to say your age. You're not 40 yet.
No, I'm not 40. I'm 37, sir.
You're 37 and we're suffering for around 13 years with ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
And then I've gone through stoma surgery. Take us back, Rachael, to what life was like. You know, what were the symptoms? How did your diagnosis come about? What was happening?
I always probably just put it down to having like a dodgy tummy. I just couldn't eat certain things, like that. And I suppose it was around the time of we bought a house, we got married, and I got a new job. So the three most stressful things in life, all within a few months. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't keep any food down, why I just felt so rotten all the time, losing blood, all the what we now know are the main symptoms. And I had myself convinced I had an ulcer, so I went to the GP and he was like, maybe it's hemorrhoids, blah blah blah. I just couldn't shake the fatigue. You know what that's like, that overwhelming, all-consuming tiredness that just you can't function with. And I remember saying to my now husband, he had been around obviously for a long time and understanding that I had dodgy stomach. And it's like, I'm just going to have to go to A&E. And I think it was possibly on the third or fourth time being admitted to A&E, I finally got my diagnosis then of ulcerative colitis. But sort of just told, even think it was by a nurse or something. Like, I was never sat down and said, like, this is what you've got and this is what this is. It was just the nurse. And I sort of said to her, has anything come back yet? Oh yeah, you've got ulcerative colitis. And then, just moved on with whatever.
And had you been admitted at that stage?
Yes. So yeah, I was an inpatient at that stage. So that I think that was maybe like a day or two after. Right. I presume it was colonoscopy. I can't even remember that long ago.
Yes, but they obviously did some tests or scans on you, which kind of revealed then that you had ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
Was there any form of treatment at that stage? Or how long did you stay in hospital for? What did they do for you?
That was just a wee short stay. And I was just sent home with I think at that stage it was just like painkillers and stuff. I don't think I was even started on anything major at that stage. I remember having to go back again and go to my GP, and then that's when I started on Pentasa, which I'm sure you've probably had too. That was sort of what I now know is like the first sort of brand, or the first one that they give to you, if you like, so took that, the big whopper tablets and the granules, tried every combo of that and realized, this isn't actually making any difference. And it was nearly every 8 months to the day nearly that I was getting a flare. So depending on, when that was happening, I was maybe being admitted at least twice a year. and maybe a GPs in between and stuff. And by this stage, it was on and off steroids flat out as well.
And steroids, obviously, I must say, you felt okay. They perked you up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they perk you up a wee bit, and they perk you up before they puff you out, and all,
Yeah,
you know.
moon face.
Yes, moon face. And I suppose that was, and normally by the time you'd done the 8-7-6 right down, I was feeling better. And then I remember I was actually at church one Sunday, and there's a guy, he was my surgeon. Well, he was my surgeon at one stage, but then I was under another one. And I said to him, how do I see Mr. Hewitt, that was at the time? I said, like, how can I get to see this man? Where does he work out of privately? I can't function here anymore. And the strangest thing, because I wasn't going to even go out that weekend. I mean, I wasn't fit for it, but something made me think, no, you have to, and I'm so glad I did, because pushed myself, went out that weekend, and that was a Sunday, and he said, look, come and see me on Tuesday morning at like 11 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember going to see him, and he went through everything. He had me in within like 8 to 10 days for a scope, a full colonoscopy, the full everything, biopsies and everything taken. And that's when he discovered it was quite everything. The ulcers were really angry. It was probably the first time that I had looked at and maybe the last. When you're lying there before you get all the good drugs, and they're like, "Do you want to have a look?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then you see all this stuff on the screen. So I swiftly got topped up with the drugs and didn't look again. But then he got me a gastroenterologist. I was never under one of them before. So that was when things started to change, because I got put onto azathioprine then.
Right, okay. So that was kind of your start of proper treatment then that was gonna
Yeah.
as such. And like how many years, obviously you have a family, you've gone on to have some children and, as well as having major flare-ups and things before actually having stoma surgery. How did that
Yeah.
go for you?
I mean, I remember my first of three girls. So my eldest daughter, Phoebe, was I'm going to say about 8 months old, and when I had a flare, which was sort of fitting into my pattern, because that, and I can remember them saying to me, I was breastfeeding, and going like, you just can't. And as before I, knew everything that I now know, and I can remember just having to just go into hospital and just stop breastfeeding. So obviously had all that pain too, but people were bringing her up, and I was having to give her a bottle and crying, going, I didn't want, no issue with bottle feeding. I don't care what anybody does, but it was just thrust upon me, with her. And then along came Violet and subsequently Margot. And Margot, the youngest one, I actually had her while taking azathioprine as well. And like, I've breastfed them all. Actually was a breastfeeding peer support worker with the trust for 5 or 6 years, because I suppose because of everything that I've gone through and learnt about protecting your gut from such a young age and things like that. And even one feed and the difference that can make. So it was something that I still am, but was particularly passionate about, because I had such young children then. But it was very hard, trying to, video calling your children, because I didn't want them coming up to the ward to pick up dear only knows what else. Them not understanding what cannulas were and having to explain that, so doing a video call, but, literally just letting them see my face and things like that. Or trying to sneak down to the corridor to meet them, but being wrapped up and things like that. So that that's the really tough bit. You can take whatever as a mom, yourself, but it's whenever it affects your babies and affects that side of things, it's different. I remember I missed Violet's, I think it was her 8th birthday. I was in hospital for that, and I missed that, and that was the really bad bit, when I actually pleaded with the surgeon at that point.
Yeah, it absolutely sucks. I can remember being in during COVID and it was AJ's 18th birthday and I thought, oh, we have to do this by FaceTime. Like you can't even come to the ward doors. It was absolutely pants rubbish. So as a mum, yeah, it's hard, especially when kids are so much younger and they don't really understand what's happening. And it's like mum's in that place, and then every time you have to go there, mum's going again. It's like when mum goes there, then she doesn't come home for a period of time. And
Yeah, and it's also, I suppose, not wanting your children to be then frightened of going to see a doctor or a hospital, because I mean we couldn't function with it. Well, I certainly couldn't function with the nurses and doctors and everybody I've had over the years. So you're trying to say to them, I'm going here to get better, but it's very hard when you're so small and they just want you.
Did you, whenever you were pregnant, did you have like a reprieve? Did you have no flare-ups? Was pregnancy good? I know for a lot of people with IBD, they're encouraged to get pregnant because your body goes into some type of remission during pregnancy, and of course, then as soon as the baby's born, usually boom.
Yeah, I probably was in sort of like remission, really. Phoebe is definitely grand. Violet, my wee middle, she doesn't like being called a middle child, but she is. But I remember with her, I think I was about 35 weeks pregnant and had like a sort of like the start of a flare, and the thought that was going to put me into labour. And I can remember thinking, oh my goodness, right, okay. But we managed it. It didn't have to go on steroids or anything. It was just got fluids, and it persevered through that. But and again with Margot, completely fine. So yeah, I suppose that was the best drug, but it's a wee bit of an extreme one to go to.
Well, so what then happened? So you've had a full pan-proctocolectomy, or so Barbie butt as we call it. What
Yeah.
happened? What was the build up then to you having that surgery? Because you go from having biologic treatment, and then all of a sudden, boom, you had to have surgery.
Yeah, the azathioprine just wasn't working anymore. The pain was just, I can't even, well, there's no words to describe it. It was just out of control, and it was, you're just awake all night, can't sleep all day. It was a continuous cycle. And I can remember it was November, would have been July 24. So it was around the time of Violet's birthday. And I was admitted, and it was 12 nights that time. And I just thought,
July 20.
yeah, July 20. Sorry. Yeah, July 23. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's only because we're close in dates.
Yes, we're very close. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So July 23. And I can remember missing her birthday. I remember crying with the nurses and everything. And I did get down to see her in the corridor and stuff, and thought, I can't do this anymore. But got rallied round, and I thought, right, okay, went back on the azathioprine then, because that was when I went up the dose and everything of the azathioprine, and they were looking into the biologics. So I had all the 20 vials of blood that felt like taken for those by this. So I had biopsies and things taken as well at that stage, because they found a GIST, gastrointestinal stromal tumor. Very rare, of course. If anyone's going to get one, Muggins is going to get one. But it turned out it was attached to my bowel wall. So nothing was, I think that was causing a lot of the pain as well. So I was getting biopsies and things done, had that 12-night admittance in the July, wasn't getting any better. And by the November, I remember just saying to my husband, you're going to just have to bring me up here, because you're going to the toilet, 78 times within an hour, and you can't eat, and you're living on Chubba Chub lollies and jelly cubes and stuff. It's no way to function. And at that stage, then I was in for 25 nights then. So I got out, I think it was like the second week, was it the 11th of December? So I remember having to do Christmas shopping from like a bed in the hospital, and nearly missed like the kids' nativity, and all those things that are stressful enough without being in the middle of a flare. And at that stage, I asked for my surgeon to come up, Mr. Neil, legend of a man, and begged and pleaded and cried and said, like, just do whatever you've got to do, because I can't function. And then he explained that just it wasn't something that you could, willy-nilly, I suppose, decide. It was very, very, serious surgery, and explained to me about it a bit more. And then said he had to speak to the specialist about the other tumor. Well, not tumor, but potential tumor.
Yeah.
So then got discharged, and it was back in like the 19th of December and had that endoanal ultrasound, which was as lovely as it sounds.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, had that done, and then they said it would be a few weeks because it was quite a specialist thing to get it read and everything. And then I got a phone call on must have been like the third week in January on a Monday to say, can you come in tomorrow just to see the surgeon and stuff? And I was like, right, okay. And I said to Johnny, my husband, I was like, I think maybe you need to come with me. I had this, you know what people say when you know? And I knew what the answer was going to be, but I thought, right. And I'd said to myself, if this has to happen and it's not my choice, like, then that's okay. Because I was afraid of like electing for it.
Yeah.
And then being cross with myself for saying, why did you do that? You didn't need that. So I thought, right, if the powers that be and the experts say that's okay. So I went up on the Tuesday and it's all a bit of a blur, but I just remember sitting in the waiting room and a sister coming up to me and she said, after your appointment, you need to come down for your pre-op assessment. And my face obviously dropped. And I said, oh, so I'm having my surgery then? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she kept coming back to apologize and stuff. So, and Johnny had gone for a cup of tea.
Had arrived before the appointment?
Yeah, so he had gone for like coffees and stuff to sort of, because I was obviously nervous just to kill the time, something to do. So she said that and he was away and I was thinking, right, okay. And then got taken in very quickly and he said, look, how are you? And I said, look, I'm completely steroid dependent. And he says, right, well, this makes the next conversation a bit easier. So, and I walked, I stayed behind for blood, sent Johnny to work, and I walked home. I'm very fortunate that I live very close to Craigavon Hospital. So I walked home and happened to meet a mummy from the school. And I said to her, I think I'm getting my surgery soon. She works in recovery. And she's like, well, she says, hopefully it's a day that I'm going to be there. She says, and I said, but it'll be a while. And literally there and then my phone rang while I was standing with her. And this was on the Tuesday. And they were like, can you come in next Tuesday? And I was like, yeah, that's okay. And I said, come back tomorrow for more bloods, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I'm working next Tuesday. So that was the right place to be and chatting to her.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in a blur of, right, okay, and probably telling people, yeah, I'm going in next week. And, when I told the girls I was going back to hospital, but told them, mummy was going to get her colitis taken away. So they were like chomping at the bit and they were excited. And I mean, I was walking around with this wee dummy, like bag, like the pretend one. No clue. I think I don't even know where I had it positioned, just oblivious in this wee world. That was the Tuesday. And then the Thursday, Margot, who was, she was just 5 at that stage. She had been waiting for months. She had like her wee teeth were overcrowded. So she had to go to Daisy Hill then and get teeth out. So I had no time to think about me because you're then into mummy mode and all that. So yeah, that was the world
Had
before.
you done any research at that point, or up until that point, you knew surgery was was heading your way? Had you done any research on stomas? Did you know anyone with a stoma? Or did it ever enter your head that you would actually have to have a stoma?
No, because up until I saw the surgeon, I wouldn't let. I'm a real Googler. Like I'd hardly buy a bottle of shampoo without researching it and googling it, but I didn't. I just thought no, because you could read a wee bit and you'd have yourself in a whole state. So I didn't. I was still clinging on to hope that there was potential for me to have a biologic if the oncologist and these people in Belfast agreed with my surgeon. So I did, I researched the life out of all of adalimumabs and all those ababs. I had researched all of them. But no, so I was probably going in quite blind to it. I mean, they did the stoma nurse, who I know the girls very well now, but they give you like a pack and she chatted to me about it. But the way people say, I've heard people say before that your you're somewhere and you're having a conversation and you're answering, but like you're not there. What like an out of body thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what was happening when she was talking to me, because I have no clue, no recollection of it.
I mean, I can remember sitting with the stoma nurses and they sighted me. It was a lovely nurse called Lisa, and she marked me of where my stoma was going to be, and she sent me home with the pack and the actually sitting behind the screen here, the fake stoma and the pack that I was given with all the trial bags and things to try out. And she went through all the dietary needs, low residue diet, all of the possibilities that can happen out of this major surgery. And even after all of that, I can remember coming home and telling my hubby and the girls, and even later after that, there was things coming up in just in normal everyday life now with the stoma. And I'm going, I wasn't told that. I don't remember being told that. And then the nurses would go, oh, you were told all of this at your pre-appointment. Like, there's so much information that they have to give to you. Your head, your mindset, you can only absorb so much, and then the rest is just like 5 minutes
Exactly.
place, gone, absolutely gone. Because you just can't take it in. There's so much.
Yeah, and I think from like chatting to you that day that we met up and stuff,
Mhm.
we're both in a desperate place. So it was probably
Yeah,
that bit of, oh my goodness, is this actually real? Is this going to happen? And am I not going to have constant pain and bleeding? Like nearly like disbelief that this, like,
yeah.
is this going to work? Because you've tried so many other things.
Mhm.
So there was a wee bit of that too. And then probably, like as I said, Margot getting the teeth out and all that sort of stuff. And then the practical side of things going, right, well, I need to like get a hospital, need to pack stuff and silly things like going, well, what sort of knickers can I wear? What will I bring into hospital? And all these things. And like, this is where Mrs. Google comes in. I was Googling the best dry shampoo. This is what I was, not looking up stomas and things. I was
Oh,
looking up these random dry shampoos to buy to bring into hospital and all. That's, yeah.
yeah. So when you woke up after surgery, did you look at your stoma straight away? How did you feel?
No, I can remember waking up, and thankfully that lady that I was telling you about, Joanne, that I met, she was there, and quite a few of the other staff that were there, I actually, because I've been in and out of Craigavon for scopes and things for so long, I actually recognised quite a few of them, so it was nice to have friendly faces.
Yeah.
I can remember lying there and being aware that a lady kept coming over and like pressing on me, which
Mhm.
I now know was checking to make sure there was like output, or um but I wasn't in any shape medley, wasn't it? And didn't even enter my head to look at it. All I wanted was my phone, because the screensaver was the kids. So that was all I wanted. So once I got that, I can remember just taking all the drugs and going and sleeping for what's felt like an eternity.
Mhm.
But no, I didn't look at well, Stella, as I now call her. But no, it was a right while before I would look at her. Maybe could be coming up to a week
Then
before I would look at her.
you just didn't have your stoma formed. You had the full pan-proctocolectomy, so you had your large bowel removed, your rectum removed, and your bum effectively
Yep.
stitched up. And you now have a perfect Barbie butt. So
Aye. The only part of it looks like a Barbie.
I remember you said that to me. You're right. Um, that's major surgery. How, it was a week before you looked at your stoma. How long, like, was the recovery?
I was in hospital for 17 nights in total in hospital, but I mean, when I got home, it was a long, long time. Walking up the stairs
Mm.
was really hard work. I mean, fortunately, we have, a bathroom upstairs and downstairs, thank goodness. So when it was downstairs, that was me.
Mhm.
And then when I went upstairs, like bedtime, I didn't move again, and it was Johnny, either in front of me or behind me every time I had to take a step. It was the
Yeah.
pain. I probably wasn't prepared for that either.
Mhm.
Um, I had, was it 36 staples? Um, there was that going on, and then obviously you have what do you call it, like a catheter in,
Mhm.
and then the
Trying.
staples, and then there's the stoma, and then there's like some sort of machine thing that was attached for a while. for like the dressings to keep that dry. And then I had an epidural, so I had like stuff going on at my back and stuff. So I didn't know where the pain was coming from. I just knew it was very sore.
Yeah.
And then the phantom pains on, you remember those?
No, I haven't had. I've still got my rectum,
Oh,
so
have you? Oh,
I
girl. Oh, check you out. Oh, then you.
phantom
Right.
pain. Yes, I've
Oh,
be standing and I feel the urgency. Okay, I've got a poo, but I
yeah.
still have mine, and I still have the ability to sit down and pass the mucus, whereas you don't.
No.
I'm very aware of phantom pains.
Yes,
Oh,
a phantom pain with that. Yeah, like that. Like, I was saying to you earlier on, like I felt a bit funny yesterday.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it was like, like, oh, well, there's no point being pretty about it. You sit in the loo and you get relief. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I'm going, yes, I go, and I would say to my husband quite regularly, I'd love to just go and do a poo.
Yeah.
And then he laughs at me, and I'm like, but dude, I just really would. And he thinks it's hilarious. But yeah, I think the bum pain
Mm-hmm.
after the surgery was one that I was not expecting at all. So I got one of those cushions, that you'd have for, like an airplane.
It's like a
Right.
donut.
Yeah, like so the donut. So I would have sat on that. I had that brought up to hospital. One of the nurses recommended that, and then I kept that at home, even sitting on the sofa. And you could have been sitting engrossed in something, and then this pain would have came and it would have took the breath from you.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good few, I'm sure, a good 6 months before I started to feel maybe a bit more like me. You could
Yeah.
paint the face on and attempt to go somewhere and stuff, but it's took a long time, definitely has.
Yeah. And so now you're a year and February, March, April. Oh goodness, we're in the May. You're like 15 months,
Yes, we're the same date, weren't we? What date were you?
pretty much. I was the 26th of January.
No, it was the 30th. Sorry.
Yeah, you had your surgery on my birthday, the day
That's
my
right.
baby
That's
should be
right.
visited.
That's right.
Scarred for life. Yeah. Um, how has it been once you kind of like hit recovery? That journey afterwards, like, is there any symptoms of colitis? Are those symptoms gone? How have you been managing?
No, well, I probably naively thought they were going to go because all those bits were cut out of me and gone.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, obviously I don't have, the pain, I don't have the bleeding and all that sort of things. I would still have that fatigue, that all consuming, that would happen every so often. And I think it's frustrating because I don't have the other symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So then trying to explain even to like my husband or like my mom and go, oh, I'm just so tired. And then I'm nearly cross about it because I sort of nearly forget that I still have it. If that makes sense. It's a strange.
Well, I think it comes with stoma life. It comes with especially the ileostomy and your body not absorbing all the nutrients the way it would if you didn't have a stoma. Um,
Yes.
Sadly,
Probably actually never thought of it like that myself, to be honest with you. Yes, yeah.
and if there's a
And
day
then
your drinking's not the same or your eating's not quite up to scratch, then it obviously has a knock-on, impact on you. So
and then I suppose up until recently that constant, is it leaking, or is there a bathroom I can go to if I got stuff with me? And I think that mentally takes its toll on you too.
yeah,
Until you get a bit more confident and stuff like that. Or even now, the odd morning you wake up and you've had a leak, and then I can never understand it, but I would be absolutely shattered. But I think that's the whole mental side of it too, and just
yeah, yeah.
being so completely drained after it.
Mhm. So you've managed. You're able to deal with the output and the bag changes and all of that. You're able to deal with that all no problem, and you don't have like colitis symptoms. Yes, you have the fatigue, but as far as you're aware, colitis is gone. It's not.
Oh yeah, no, just the fatigue I can cope with totally. Yeah, so like Stella completely saved my life in terms of like there's no pain for that side of things at all. I'm not losing blood. I'm not on steroids. I'm not taking 14 tablets a day and nearly the same at night. I mean, it's a game changer with that side of things.
Yeah.
Um, now, being completely honest, it took me a very long time to accept it,
Mm-hmm.
the stoma itself, and I mean, I wouldn't look at it, and they did get the like emergency mental health team. I can't remember the proper terminology for them, to come and see me, because I just said, look, get the surgeon. I just want it off, and I was just like,
yeah, I don't
it's
want my
just,
sugar no more. Get rid of it.
yeah, yeah. I just told him it was the night before my birthday, so I was in a hospital for my birthday, as you were, and about my husband and I have the same birthday, so I was like, I'm ruining his birthday too. I don't want this. Just tell the surgeon I want it gone, and then I can just go home. In my head that was just very sensible. But once it worked, all the staff and that in the ward were unreal, and like one night I decided I would empty the bag myself, and I had them all come into me the next day going like, is this true? Have you done? They were all so supportive, and I mean they were brilliant. And they kept saying to me, you'll look back at this and you won't believe it. And I'm going, I never will, blah, and they're right. And I got phoned them last week about something, and I actually said to them, whenever I was in and you asked me if I'll come and talk to people, and I told them to clear off pretty much. And I was like, I will do it now if you want me to. And they were going, see, we told you,
Yeah.
So,
Changed your tune.
yeah.
So let's then move on and talk about your little daughter. I did ask you, was IBD hereditary in your family whenever we had coffee, and then you told me that your daughter had been diagnosed. She's just 9.
Yeah, so Violet's 9. So it's probably, I think it's a much more bitter pill to swallow. It's a whole other ball game. As I say, I would have 24/7 flares plus my stoma and whatever. No bother. Don't touch my baby. But
yeah,
unfortunately, it is genetic, and it was something that I asked before my husband and I, before we decided to have children. It was something that I had asked about, and I was reassured. It's very rare. And again, they've said the likes of breastfeeding and everything, all the things that I could do to help, I did for all my children, and it was very much tried to do for one that make them the way you do. You're a mum, you just try. But I had noticed probably Violet was about 7, probably about 7 3/4, if you like, with children. Every month's important. And I can remember, she was calling me up, and I'm going like, there's mucus and stuff here, this couldn't be right, and just wasn't happy about it. And had brought her then up to A&E. I actually brought her to our GP first, and she phoned me back, and she's like, yeah, there are traces of blood and stuff. And I said, look, I knew there was. And she said, look, I do this as a red flag referral. So that would have been, Violet would have been about 7.5. So she'd done the referral in the September, and it just kept getting worse. Like, now she must just have a really good pain threshold, or in my head I'm thinking, has she suffered with this pain for so long that she thinks this is okay? You just don't know.
Even a child to be 7 years of age and actually say to you, Mum, this isn't right.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to sort of protect her, so they got to the point, and I was like, if you're doing any poos at home, call Mummy and Daddy, because I thought, I don't want her to see this. And I had said to my husband about it, and I think he thought I was putting 2 and 2 together and getting flipping 35. Not even, I was probably, and I would be paranoid in terms of the children. Again, I think it's a mummy thing, you just are. So then I noticed, it was getting more and more frequent, and there was nothing dietary that I could pick up on. And I thought, I'm not sure. So I kept having to bring her up to children's A&E, because the bleeding was getting more frequent, the bowel movements were getting more frequent. And then I realised that she got really, really skinny. But because I was seeing her every day, I still probably didn't appreciate it until I look back at photos. And her wee face, she was so gaunt. And then again, more pennies were dropping, that my mum would say, because she would have collected her some days from school, and she was like, oh, wee Violet just came in, loves to come home and just curl up on the sofa, and sometimes she'd have a wee nap. And then I would joke, oh, she's a nap queen like her mum, because I love a nap. And now So this had been going on, I think, even before I twigged on, I'm sure, a good 6 months prior to that.
Right.
So the GP, I have to say, was wonderful, but it just took, it was a very, very, over a year of fighting and me getting very cross and having to lose my mind. I'll say the word mind several times.
Yeah.
And pleading, going, please, can somebody scope my child, please?
And had
And
they done calprotectin tests on her at that point?
yeah, but my fecal calprotectin was never, and my bloods were never really corresponded with my symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And I can always remember my IBD nurse at the time, a lady Ruth, saying to me, Rachel, we're treating you and your symptoms. We're not treating a textbook.
Yes.
So that, like, so when these things were happening with Violet, I kept saying to them, you know, stop talking about her bloods or fecal calprotectin. It doesn't matter. I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing was, dear helper, no, I sort of tried to make it into a joke, but every time she went to the bathroom, I was taking photos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then every time I was going somewhere, I was shoving this phone in these doctors' faces.
Yeah.
I had a pediatrician tell me it was severe amenorrhea. The stage she had just turned 8, which you and
Further
I
back
know is
side.
heavy periods.
Yeah.
Out of a different hole, without being crude, but also, I mean, she hasn't started that. She had just turned 8 at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I remember her calling me into the bathroom one day, and I knew by her voice it was bad. And she called me in, and she had stood up, and the blood was actually just dripping out from her and falling onto the floor. So I was like, just you sit down, don't look, it's fine. And then she was going faint on me and all these things. And so that was straight back up to the hospital again.
Mm-hmm.
But that night I phoned up first. That actually was waiting for the call back because we've been up and down that many times. I was so afraid of picking something else up. And also, if I then had to go and sort out Stella, I didn't like leaving her,
Yeah.
so,
Mm-hmm.
but finally one night would have been last September, so September 24. So this stage she had just turned 9.
Mm-hmm.
She was 9 in the July, and they kept saying to me, oh, you're on the list, you're waiting for red flagged appointment, or for colonoscopy and stuff. And when that night, the bleeding was really, really bad, and I phoned at 111 or whatever, the phone first thing, and they phoned me back, and I happened to get a really, really nice lady. Not being sexist at all, but she got it, and I said to her, this can't go on. Violet had said to my husband, only a few weeks prior, that she didn't like life. And when you're having your this is when I've been fine, but when I talk about that, that's when I can't. But when your child's telling you that,
Mm-hmm.
that
Right.
takes it to a whole other level. So I'd this lady said, right, bring her in, and she took bloods and everything again. And I said, look, these bloods are going to be okay, but I had photos of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I had got to the point where I was nearly using a ruler and like measuring and pointing down the toilet. Like, I mean, I couldn't have shown anybody my phone because it was just so
Graphic.
dodgy. Yeah, it was awful, and it was the only way I had of like proving that I wasn't like neurotic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then we got discharged and was told, oh, this will get done again very soon, and it didn't, and the bleeding kept getting worse and worse. So we ended up going back up to the Royal, or beg your pardon, to Blossom again. And I said to them in a half jokey way, I said, look, if you need to tell the Royal I'm going to take a bin and trash this room, I'm happy to do it. Now, I wouldn't have been fit to even lift the bin because at this stage I hadn't even gone back to work from my surgery, So they agreed finally, and I refused to leave. And I said, Violet, we're not going. So we stayed in Craigavon until there was a bed for her in the Royal. And we went down there on the Sunday with the promise of a scope on the Monday, which turned to the Tuesday. Sorry, someone's cutting my grass. So she finally got the scope on the Wednesday. Told me it would be the usual scope an hour. She was down for 3.5 hours. And I walked out the back door of the Royal. Those, well, the back of the Children's Royal. So I was sort of down I think that's the Falls Road, and walking about trying to get to the shopping centre, which is actually at the end of the road. Got completely lost, no clue where it was. I think I was actually walking down the street crying, so it probably looked like nobody probably wanted to approach me at this stage. But went, and Violet loves a sloth, so went and bought her a sloth and B&M and all plastic crap and tat and lip glosses and lip balms, and just it was just to content me.
Yeah.
And I came back up, and I remember saying to the nurse when I came back up, she wasn't back again. And I said, "What's taking so long?" She says, "Don't know." She says, "But look, we haven't heard anything. No news is good news," sort of thing. And I said to her, I remembered, and I remember her face when I said it, and I said to her, "Just so you know, if this isn't ulcerative colitis," I says, "I'm going to kick off." And I said, "And prepare yourself for it." And she looked at me and she goes, "What do you mean?" And I says, "We both know what I mean." Because I thought, she's been gone for too long and this isn't going to be good. And how am I going to make that phone call? So I had, and then the doctors came up. Violet came up and transferred into the bed. She didn't care about all the stuff I bought her. I gave her a kiss and she was straight back to sleep. And I remember this stage they had brought, I forgot to tell you this, in the minute they actually had brought a doctor over from Alderhay, which is in Liverpool, where you go to see your daughter, don't you? Go there. So that doctor and another surgeon and then the sister came over and they were like, "Do you want to go into the corner room, mummy?" They call you mummy just. And I was like, "No, I don't." I refused to leave. I just sat beside her, and he opened up like like you have the way, like your baby scan photos. Like you have like people hold up. Yeah. So he held up those, and he was like, "So this is the stomach, and you can see it's okay." So and I was like, "Okay, so we're not talking Crohn's." And he looked at me, and then he opened out another set, and I mean, it was as red as anything. And I was like, "Okay." He says, "We both know what that means." And he looked at me, and I was like, "So I was right." And I didn't mean it to be like that, but I was like somebody, probably like a weight off my shoulder.
Finally.
Anyway, so finally, that was the wee pet diagnosed. That was the September, and then didn't get any better with the steroids at all, and ended up back in November. But the stage was passing clots in the November. It had got really bad really quick, so we were back in, and that was when she was started on the azathioprine and the infliximab. So yeah.
From November until now, your little 9-year-old has been having her infusions.
She's been having infusions, yeah. So she had been getting, the first one was as an inpatient. And then we were back a week after for the next one. And then it was 2 weeks after. And then 4 weeks. At the minute we're on 5 weeks. So they're hoping to maybe push her to 6, but I'm sort of a bit skeptical, that sort of what happens if we push her that wee bit longer, so. But yeah, so it's very nice.
How is she faring up going through your infusions?
She's unreal. I mean, I often say to my husband, and say to other people, and I don't mean a disservice to my other children, but out of my 3 kids, she is the only one who can handle this. Violet is a sassy, feisty wee girl, and she always has been from no age, born with that wee glint in her eye. And we joked, Violet's born to be a middle child because she just is full of the attitude, and I love her for it. And even the way she chats to the nurses and everything, no matter where she goes, she's brilliant. And even like passing the clots and stuff, and being in pain, like wouldn't ask me for paracetamol, and the nurses and I, even being admitted, having to go to her like, "Please take something, because we're trying to help you." She just gets on with it. Now she has asked me a few times, when she was in hospital, when she was really sore. And the last time she got discharged, I had to give her like foam enemas every night. Don't know if you were ever had those.
Foam suppositories.
Suppositories, but these are like expanding foam, come up with the big, yeah. So again, having to hold your line, and they wouldn't let her home from hospital until she had let me give her one in the ward. So one of the nights while giving her those at home, and again my husband having to hold her at one side and me having to do it while my other two kids are standing on the landing crying because they're worried, you know. We try and joke about it's bum medicine and stuff, but she did ask me, you know, Mummy, can I not just get Stella like you?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my instinct was go no. But then I had to think, right, well, potentially she's 9 here. I mean, she has a long, please God, a very long, healthy, you know, or a long life ahead of her. There's that every chance that she might need the surgery. So I'm like, look, you don't need Stella now. You don't need a stoma now. And we're going to try this first. We're doing that first because I don't want it to be the way I had it in my head, like it was the last case scenario, you know, like it was the, sorry, they're jumping away upstairs there. I hope you're not
No,
hearing that,
I
are
don't
you?
care. I don't
Oh,
care.
that's okay.
But
That's okay.
you've had to learn to advocate for her, and then because you've been through it yourself, you have to think of it on the other side of like the stoma surgery is not what I would want for my child. But you know what? If it's going to give her a long life where she is pain free and colitis free, then it's it's probably an option at some stage. You know that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like my 3 kids have been very good with my eldest one, wasn't so sure at the start, probably like myself with looking at Stella, but like the other two, Violet and Margot, like my at that stage, she was 5. I don't know if I told you this, but they happened to be there one day that the nurses were changing it, and this was the stage where I was still holding the blanket over my face.
Yeah.
And the stoma nurses were going, that just looks like a wee rosebud, Rachel. And I was like, yeah, dead on. Wouldn't look at it. And she said to Margot and Violet, you know, your mummy's going to love this, you know, and your mummy'll have to give it a name and everything. And Margot turned around to this nurse who she'd never met and said, well, I already love it because it's part of my mummy.
Yeah.
So I just sat and sobbed. And then the nurse actually, she looked at me and she was like wiping a tear away. So my kids have been so good. Like,
Yeah.
it's got to the point where I don't even let on I'm getting a shower or going to change my bag because they get cross if they're not involved. Like, there's no privacy in my house at all. And I have like a few I don't have one on today, but I've like covers and things, and they're like, I want to pick it and things like that. So I'm hoping with all that happening that if it ever came to it for Violet, that at least she's seen, well, do you know what, my mummy can do it and she's not that bad. So, you know,
Yeah.
she can handle it. So
No, it's also the older they get, the more understanding they have with like this save mum's life,
yeah.
because it very quickly can change in an instant where the bowel perforates and, you're septic.
Yeah.
A very completely different story.
And that's what, you know, I sold it to them, I'm going to hospital to get rid of my colitis. And so when it came to like my stomaversary, which I thought was a bit cringe, but we went with it at the start, and we went out for birthday tea and I went and got my hair done. And then I went and got a tattoo of a rosebud because you know what? She does look like a rosebud.
Yeah.
So all those things. So I'd like to make it a positive thing for the girls as well. So it's, it's
Yeah.
like I'd always said, if it had another daughter, Stella was the name I wanted. So that's why Stella got Stella Stoma. So I'm like, girls, it's just like we've another wee part of the family, and tried to just, she always comes with us too, and tried to just make it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm saying this like with a smile on my face, but like there's been days where I'm having to psych myself up to change the blinking bag, and being so paid off that I have to do this, or that I'm having to always make sure I've got my wee bag of spurs with me, and and things like that. And so it's not, but I try and not let them see that side of things, especially Violet, because
But I'm sure, like myself, when you're having those moments, you're very quickly reminded what life was like before you actually had Stella.
yeah, and do you know what?
Back there.
I know I don't want to go back there, and do you know what the thing is, which is quite good? I've nearly forgotten what the really bad pain's like, which I think's really good. Do you know whenever?
Yes. Yeah.
I can remember like laying in bed and those spasms and cramps and squeezing Johnny's hand, pleading to like being knocked out nearly. And I'm like, I can't even really remember too much of that. Whereas like when I was recovering and I was going like I didn't want this and crying and everything, and going to Johnny, like those pains weren't that bad. Like, you know, I was being dramatic. It wasn't that bad, you know, trying to like produce, like I knew I could never, yeah, and I knew I could never get a reversal. I mean, because all my parts are in long incinerated. They're long incinerated, like, so like they're gone. But you know, but yeah, so I'm nearly at that stage where I'm totally like it's all in the past sort of thing. So it's
Good, good.
yeah.
It's that the key is acceptance, and even though we're accepting of it, it doesn't mean that there's days where we're like not accepting of it, or like, you know, I'll say, I look down and go, oh crikey, it's you and me forever, like
Yeah.
maybe, you know,
Well, no, yeah, exactly.
opinions, but
I think it is, and it's even, you know, this last while I've actually been able to sleep through the night a few nights. Now it's not every night,
yeah,
but that's like, oh my goodness, you totally take things like that for granted. You know, at the start I was up every couple of hours and stuff. So I mean, yes, there are days where I'm not, depending on, but I'm learning too. You know, don't eat too much after a certain time. And I remember you said to me yours is really slow, like
yeah,
you know nearly exactly. And I'm trying to think from chatting to you that day, trying to think, right, think through when you're eating and try and, you know,
mhm.
without being overly graphic, you know,
Yeah,
when that's
exactly,
coming out. So
yeah,
then trying to think that and trying to like think back then and stuff too. So I think, and that'll only get better with sort of time. And you know, a couple of weeks ago, you'll get a laugh. We went away for the day with friends and we had a picnic, and my friend had brought a red velvet cake, gorgeous, devoured it. Then got up that night and was like, Johnny's like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh my goodness,
love
Stella's
my
bleeding. Stella's bleeding. I do not know what's happening. He's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. And then he's like, what do you have to do? And I goes, I don't understand this. Then like penny dropped this like epiphany, blinking red velvet cake.
yeah. Beetroot doesn't exactly the same.
We say I'm too unhealthy to eat beetroot, but the red velvet.
Yeah, I can see where you're going, and you straight
But
away
yeah,
gonna say,
but
yeah,
it's so funny. It's yeah, so it's like all those sort of first, and now I can like laugh away about it, but it's all those,
yeah.
you know, when there's
It's
other
crazy
elements.
how you chew your food, but yeah, when it comes out, you know exactly what you've eaten.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you doing? And no matter, like, I get the drops from Respond and everything, they're brilliant and all those sort of things, but you're like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. I've given up with
those,
those things now, and I did have a few cheese and onion crisps a few nights ago, and obviously because I've slow transit, it takes
yes,
like 24 hours, and I just sent a bag empty, and it doesn't matter
yeah,
whether there's air freshener in the bathroom or not. As soon as
yeah,
the outfit hits the toilet, it's like
yeah,
cheese and
there
onion.
you are,
I
there
smell
you
it.
are.
I'm like,
Especially if they're potato,
yeah, it's so potent,
yeah,
absolutely potent.
and garlic and
Just,
onions would do that for me. You have, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, it's all those, once you get past those sort of things and, like, you know, and this, like, I have three daughters, so I think there's never like a door locked in my house because you just don't get that. They're in looking you for something, or um so like I go to the loo and I hardly like I close the door, but they could burst in or whatever, and then my husband walked past. He's like, if you were just sitting doing a poo, the door wouldn't be open. And I'm like, I know, but it's not a poo. In my head it's, but it is. Do you know,
perfectly.
it's just, it's all, it's just different. And you know, there's obviously had to be firsts in other departments of life and things that we've had to work through, and I was convinced that would never ever, thank goodness I'd had my children, because there would be the Immaculate Conception if I did, because that was shut up and all. But you know what? There's life too. So I mean, it's all of those things that
Yeah.
you realise down the line that, you know,
Like
you
this
can.
the other side surgery. It's
Yeah.
grand. It can be even better.
Oh, too right, because you're not like waiting for the next flare, and like I'm not gonna need, unless it's for something else, I'm not gonna need flipping prednisolone again.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
You know, and all the side effects of that, and all the hair falling out, and all the
yeah,
skin, you know, all those side effects of all the things that they take to make you better and stuff. So it's and I probably said to you too, if I hadn't had my surgery when I did, I wouldn't have been fit to help Violet and to have fought for her. And like the first time I had to change the bag, apart from being in our house, was whenever she was an inpatient and I was in the Royal. And I said to the nurses, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And they were like, look, they brought me in another wee room, and they were so helpful. They were brilliant. So that was like a wee challenge for me as well. But if I had been really sick and been flaring actively and needing your IV fluids and needing IV steroid, like I couldn't have been with her. So I mean, I'm just so strangely, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm just glad that it's been, that box has been ticked.
Rachel, if there was one piece of information that you could give, if there was another mum listening who is maybe walking through a similar journey of, I don't know, IBD has been hereditary, it's being passed down to a child, or they're even just navigating, even if they haven't been through it themselves, but going through a diagnosis of inflammatory bowel disease with their child, what would that piece of information be?
I think, like, don't doubt yourself. I think mother's intuition sounds corny, but like, don't doubt it. It's really valid. And after like meeting the consultant that Violet now has, and who said to me one appointment while I cried with her, going like, I believe you. Like, you're not trying to convince people anymore. So I suppose having that sort of confidence and but also the practical side of things, take photos, just all those things to back yourself up. That's a really hard bit. But if you do get a diagnosis and things, then you know what you're dealing with, you know what you're working with. And then it's something that, if it's new to the family or if it's already there, that you can navigate together. And it's without, I'm going to say it, it's shit. And it is. And like Violet's 9, and like we don't swear a lot in our house, but when she goes for appointments and sometimes she gets really overwhelmed, doesn't want the line and all going in, and I'm like, you're allowed to say it. And that's what I allow her to say when it's going on. I'm like, do you know what? Shit. And we've worked with a fantastic psychologist in the Royal as well, the children's, unbelievable girl. So for me, said that in the appointment, she's like, right, that's okay. So when Violet was having it really tough with the infusion, she's like, I think you need to say it, Violet. And then that's been like a wee giggle, like, I'm allowed to say that, Nanny, whenever I go for this, and because, and I'm like, but it's okay, Violet, because that is what's happening. That's what's coming out of Stella, and that's what comes out of you. So, and trying to sort of find a way that works, because, what works for my family won't work for other families, but it's, I think, having that determination. Like, my husband, oh, sorry, just going to say, my husband always complains because I'm stubborn and I don't let, like, I not let anything lie. And he said to me after we got the diagnosis for Violet, he's like, I've never been so glad you're such a stubborn cow. So
somebody had to advocate, somebody had to push, and it's okay advocating for yourself, or accepting something for yourself, and putting up with your norm, but actually when it's passed on to your children or someone that you love very much, you just get this inner strength to just say, no, I'm not accepting it, I will not accept it, and I will push for answers. And you're
definitely
very deserving of that. The child is very deserving of that. So you've been an absolute tripper, a legend.
Thank you.
Advocating, keep doing what you're doing for yourself and for your family, and you will continue to inspire so many more people, and definitely take up.
I don't know about that, but sure.
Winners. Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much for taking time up of your day. I will say to your audience that I will tag Rachel's social media handle here below. If there's any questions that you have in relation to what we've discussed, remember, we're not professionals, we're just sharing our own personal opinions and experiences. But drop us a question and we will try and get you answers. Likewise, if you're on a similar journey and you have symptoms, go and seek medical professional help from people who can point you in the right directions, because advocating for yourself is what matters. So Rachel, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's lovely to chat to you again.
Yeah, it's great. Guys, that's it for today. It's over and out from Rachel and myself, but do come back to join us next week again for another episode.